These tools are cool. We can see, okay, it makes me maybe more productive by generating code, but we have to make sure the quality of the code is also good enough for our needs. So we don't have to refactor at the end more code than we generated, so we don't save any time because we have to refactor and refactor and refactor. And yeah, the talk is about code smarter, not harder, how AI coding tools boost your productivity. And I want to start with 3 quotes from 3 famous persons you may know. And the first quote is, we believe that in 2025, we might see the first AI agents join the workforce, from Sam Altman, CEO of OpenAI. The next quote from Jensen Huang from NVIDIA, AI agents are going to get deployed. I think this year we are going to see it take off, okay? And the last quote from Mark Zuckerberg, AI will write most software soon. Okay, these are strong quotes, so I think it's maybe worth to take a closer look. Will AI replace us developers this year? We will see. Or maybe we can use that tool, the technology, to be more productive at the end and don't get replaced by some stupid AI tools. So some words about myself. My name is Daniel Sogl. I'm a software architect at ThinkTexture. And yeah, my company is focusing a lot in Angular technology, .NET, and also in everything that is Gen AI. And I'm also a freelancing trainer for Manfred Steyer at Angular Architects. So maybe you were part of the meetup the last time Manfred was speaking. So this is my side hustle. And my main focus is Angular, mobile apps with capacitor, and developer experience tools like coding tools with AI. And if you want, you can follow me on social. So when you follow this link later, you will find my blog, my LinkedIn post, and also my slides. So they will be also published there. So feel free to follow me after that talk. So the first thing I like to explain or to define is the topic or the name AI agent. What is an AI agent? Because I think this year will be the year of AI agents, as we've seen before with that quotes from these famous CEOs. And yeah, I defined it like this. An AI agent is an autonomous system designed to perform tasks, make decisions, and adapt based on data and user feedback. And it operates independently, automating processes in various fields like software development. So we can see, okay, AI agent is we talked a lot about AI, and now there's a new topic, AI agents. So tools that can work independent to help us developers maybe to write code, create applications, or help us creating and automate some workflows. And the goal of this talk is to show you the current stand of tools we can use today to create applications and to be more productive using these coding tools. And we will see some of this new AI agent technology stuff. And the first I want to give you a short introduction into the tools I use on a daily basis. There are so many tools out there. It's hard to overview them all. So this is just one piece of the large cake of AI agent or coding tools out there. And the first tool I'd like to show you later is V0 from Vercel. We have Bold. We have Lovable, and we have Bold.DIY. So these tools I will categorize into this prototyping field. So these are prototyping tools we can use later to bring our ideas into working applications with just one prompt, for example. And on the other hand, we have tools that we as an experienced developer should know to be more productive, to work with real-world code, not just prototyping something. And the first tool I will talk about later will be Cursor. There's Copilot, there's Windsurf, and there is a tool called Klein. And I will talk about Cursor and Klein. I think these are the 2 tools that are, from my perspective, the best tools out there to work as a developer. And maybe after the talk, we have time to talk about the other tools out there. But I will keep it simple. So the first category, AI-driven MVPs, are tools that can bring our ideas to life with just one prompt. So here's a screenshot from one of the tools called Lovable, for example. Normally looks like ChatGPT, right? So you have an input mask, you can type text in it and say, create me a to-do app, create me a admin dashboard, create me something. And you can provide your own data to that models. You can see here in the screenshot, maybe it's a bit too small. You can attach images. You can connect to Figma. So you can bring in your existing design systems into that kind of tools. And these tools can also work with backend solutions like Supabase. I will also show you a short demo how you work with Supabase, for example, to create a full stack application without the knowledge of how to work with backend technology, maybe. And what's also cool about the tools is later you can export that code generated by them. You can connect GitHub, for example, or we can run CLI commands to export the components we created. And the first tool is, as I said, V0 by Vercel. Maybe you heard Vercel when you are in this React ecosystem a bit. So Vercel is known as a developer behind Next.js. So I would say this is the most famous React framework out there to create React applications. And this tool is mainly used to create small React components and not to create full stack applications. So you don't want to use this tool to create a fully application connected to a backend, for example. You try to create smaller components with different iterations. And the cool thing about V0 is at the end, when you want to export that component to your existing code base, you can just run a CLI command, and then you have your component you created in this environment, in this browser-based environment, into your existing project. The only downside of V0 and other tools later is we will see that these tools are React-centric when it comes to prototyping tools. So we are here at the Angular meetup and have to tell you something about React, but I think that does not matter. So these tools are not here to create production-ready code we can later deploy and start working with. We use these tools to bring, as I said, our ideas to life. We have an idea, let's try it out in a fast way. So the technology behind, I would say, does not matter. It's React. I think, okay, we can ignore it as an Angular developer, but I think it's not a problem. So I'll give you a short demo about V0, for example. So maybe I increase it a bit. And I took a screenshot of this famous component in GitHub. So you can see here how many contributions I did in the last couple of weeks. And I can ask V0 to recreate this component. Now I can say, okay, create me this component. The component should also be responsive. That's it. Let's run it. Let's see if it works. If not, I have a backup because I tried it out before. So this should take, I don't know, 30 seconds. Or less. So now we can see on the left side, we have our chat window, and all tools like this work the same. On the left side is our chat window. And on the right side, we can see the generated code. So now V0 goes on and creates this component for us. We can see this is React code. And this will take some seconds. It looks good. Looks more or less like the demo I recorded before. And the cool thing is now it produces a preview, and we can see, okay, this time it worked not that well. So we can maybe try out my fallback. So this was the result before. This looks much better. Let's increase it maybe. It's not. Sorry? Yeah, yes, correct. Because I did not give too much context to that model. Of course, we have to maybe write better prompts, but this is just a short demo. So we have now an interactive component. This is also responsive. And we can now take a look into the code, copy paste it, or we can publish it, or we can share it. And this is also possible. Here's this deploy button, for example, so we can deploy it to the Vercel services. So this is one tool. But for us as an Angular developer, maybe not that helpful because the code at the end is React. But V0 and the other tools can produce Angular components, but they cannot preview them. This is maybe one downside. Tools, I think, are more, let's change for the raw. Okay. Another tool that I think for us Angular developers are more important is Bolt.new. It's developed by StackBlitz. Maybe you heard StackBlitz. This is the famous browser-based IDE. More or less, it's Visual Studio Code in the browser. So you can open a browser environment and develop directly into the browser. And this is something that Bolt can. We can use any framework. So you can tell Bolt, create me an Angular application a to-do application with Angular, or use Next.js or Vue or any kind of framework, because this browser-based IDE supports any Node-based or JavaScript-based frameworks out there. And we can use Bolt the same way as we used V0. But the point is here that Bolt is here for full stack applications. So instead of just creating one component, we can say, build me a full application, connect it to APIs, use this or that NPM library, for example. The only downside of tools like Bolt is that the performance is limited when it comes to larger applications. Tools will get slower and also a lot expensive, because not sure how deep you are in LLMs. So LLMs count in tokens. So when you send something into the LLM, you count tokens, and when this LLM sends you data back, this is also counted in tokens. So when you have a large project, you have to send a lot of data to that LLM. Of course, it gets really expensive. But the cool thing here is also this Supabase integration. But I will show you more about Supabase with the next tool. I think this is the best prototyping tool out there currently, and it's called Lovable. And you can see it looks like the same. We have, again, a text input field here. And one thing that is Lovable doing compared to Bolt is that the Supabase integration is really deep. Not sure, have you ever used Supabase? Is there anyone using it? Someone? So Supabase is like a file-based clone with open source technology. So you can self-host it, so they provide authentication, storage, a database, real-time database, and cloud functions. So everything we need for a fully working backend. So we can now use Lovable together with Supabase, and Supabase is for free, so you don't have to pay for MVPs, I would say. When you use large applications, of course, you have to pay something. But now we can use Lovable to connect our front end to a back end, in this case, Supabase. Because the limited time, I created a demo before. And where is it? It is here, the LinkedIn post generator, because nowadays no one writes posts by its own anymore. Maybe I click sign out. So we have here this demo application. It's also a React application, but as I said, it does not matter, I would say, because it's just an MVP. So I told Lovable, create me an application where I can generate posts for LinkedIn. I want to use authentication. And I want to use at the back end two functions. I want to use the API from Perplexity. So this is this famous search LLM-based search machine. I want to use Perplexity to search the web for the latest information, latest news about Angular, about any technology, and then use this and put it, bring it to the OpenAI LLMs to generate any text for me. And so we have now a real login here. And this application is connected to Supabase. And all the data we can see here now is also stored in Supabase. I don't have to think about that. We can see when we take here a look into the chat, Lovable created some SQL queries because Supabase uses Postgres. And it's directly connected, so I can review the SQL queries and say, okay, it's working, please proceed. And then this query will directly be executed. So I don't have to even open the Supabase UI. So this is already connected. And then I can say here, for example, write me a blog post or write me a LinkedIn post about Angular signals, for example. And then can I say, okay, it should be professional or casual or technical. And now there will be a cloud function be called, and this is collecting data with Perplexity. And after that, this data will be sent to the OpenAI API. And I don't have to think about how can I set up this API? How can I talk to this API? I just ask Lovable, hey, I want to talk to that API. Lovable asks me, okay, I need only the API key, and I set up the function for you, and you don't have to do anything. And now we can see, here's the text generated. Maybe it's a bit too small. I think the quality of the text might be not the best because I did not write a system prompt and define it. But we can also see here some sources from Perplexity, for example. So we can also check the sources. Okay, Perplexity, read through some blog articles, for example, to collect some knowledge. And I made this application in like 10 minutes. That's it. I just need 10 minutes. I had to set up Supabase. This took me 2 minutes to wait until the backend was up and running. Then I hit go back to here to the Lovable UI, connected the application, the Supabase application. There's this Supabase button at the top, and that's it. Now I have a really working application prototype. Yes, I have not to go out. I have not to write any lines of code, nothing. Everything worked inside this browser environment. Yes, just prompting, that's it. I don't have to go to Supabase. I have to go to Supabase to create my account, of course, but that's it. Yeah, that's really cool. And I would say, because my talk is about more productivity, when I would ask you, create me an application like this, I don't think you need 10 minutes to solve that issue. You need hours, maybe days. You have to take a look into the APIs of OpenAI. You have to read the documentation of Perplexity. Maybe you are a front-end developer. You don't know how to create a backend, so you have to think about that. This costs time. And something like this, you have an idea in mind, your product owner has an idea in mind, it takes minutes, and you can play around with this idea. If it's working, how will it look like, for example? Yeah, there's prompt. When I scroll up, you can see I ask it, I try to challenge it a lot. Maybe it's lagging a bit. So I want to build a LinkedIn post generator. I write posts about web technologies and so on. The generator should help me to find new topics by searching for the latest news in the internet. Should help me generate posts, and so on. And then I continued, okay, the UI was ready. Then I said, okay, now I want to use the Perplexity API. Now I want to use the OpenAI API. And so you do iterations, of course. You don't try to write a full book and give it to these systems to write the application. You start small, start with the UI, for example, and then you go on. Yes. Yeah, it's not working with Angular. This is just React, yeah. So it's opinionated. But as I said, from my perspective, I don't care if it's React or Angular. I want to validate my ideas I have, or the ideas of the product owner, if it's working. I don't care if it's Angular or React. So for me, it's irrelevant. So we don't have to watch the backup video. So there are cons, of course. Not everything is great. So the pro side is, as you see, the speed is really, really fast. You cannot beat that systems by humans. It's not possible. And so yeah, that makes you more productive. The environment is fully working in the browser, so you don't have to set up anything locally. You can open it on a Chromebook. Anyone can use these tools. This is cool. You directly get feedback. You can say, okay, I don't like the colors, change the colors, and the tools will change the colors for you in seconds. This is great. And what I like is the Supabase integration. So you can bring full backend functionality to that prototypes also. That's really cool. And as I said, Supabase costs you nothing in the free tier. For MVPs, it's working fine. We don't have to pay anything. And you can collaborate, of course, with other developers. The tools provide the feature to share the code you generated and collaborate with others. On the downside, of course, number one downside is the costs. Some tools are more transparent than others. Some tools pay in tokens like Bolt, but Lovable is paying in messages. So when you ask this tool something, this is one message. So it can be 1,000 words, it can be just one word. So it's maybe not that flexible when it comes to costs. And I would say the code that will be produced by the tools is not production ready. You should not use them and deploy it and think the code is good. No, it isn't. And you are sometimes vendor locked in, like with Vercel's V0, because they want to sell you Vercel services. You are a bit vendor locked. And of course, as I said, mostly React support and Angular is only supported by Bolt. But I think for us as a developer, that the tools to write real code are more important. And so this is why I want to talk about coding agents or coding helpers, AI-based coding helpers. And those tools I like to show you, there are two. One is a coding IDE, and the other tool is just a plugin you can put into your Visual Studio Code instance. And the cool thing about the tools is they have two modes. They have a plan mode and they have an act mode. And maybe you know there are multiple or different LLMs out there. So there are some of them, OpenAI, DeepSeek, Anthropic, and Gemini. And there are some models they're called reasoning models. Maybe you heard of them. So reasoning models are models, they are reasoning. So you ask them something, they produce output, and then they revalidating this output again. So you can use them to plan your architecture, for example. You can ask them questions. Okay, please review my code. Please review my architecture. And because of the reasoning, they will give you better results. So this is also possible with the tools. And of course, this is also a multimodal, like here, use images. And what's also cool and important, because when I talk about with people about Copilot, for example, and about Angular, they always complain, okay, Copilot does not know there's a new control flow syntax. There are signals. We have now standalone by default, and so on. Because when you ask an LLM, for example, what's the latest Angular version, normally they answer Angular version 15 or 17 maybe. So this is a big problem. So we can give that tools more context. We can give them access to documentations later. We can define rules to make sure that the output does match our guidelines internally, for example. And this is the next thing I'd like to show you. And I would say the coolest tool out there is Klein. Cline is a plugin that you can integrate into Visual Studio Code, and this tool is completely free. As the plugin itself is free, but of course it depends on the LLMs you later want to use, how much it costs. So it's cost efficient, and I will show you a short demo soon. You can see how much how many tokens will be sent to the LLM and how many tokens will be sent back. And you can track the costs. You can see, okay, this prompt costed me 5 cents, for example. This is really cool when working with Klein. You can use nearly any LLM out there. So, for example, there was this DeepSeek thing the last couple of weeks. Everyone was talking about DeepSeek. It's so cool. It's so cheap. And yes, it is cheap. And then with Klein, you can say, okay, let's use DeepSeek v3 or the R1 for reasoning, and save a lot of money. You only have to pay maybe half the price than before using the open AI models. This is also really cool. And what's also a cool technology, it's written down there, it's called MCP, Model Context Protocol. This is an API by Anthropic. So Anthropic is also an LLM developer, AI company. And with this protocol, we can write tools to give that LLMs more context. We can say, for example, we write a tool that is able to collect data from Jira or Confluence. Or we can say, okay, interact with the browser, for example, so the LLM or this tool can create a component, open the browser, check is the component working or not. Maybe are the colors readable or not. Okay, let's continue, go on and refactor the component. Is it working? The models can also read the console output, can read lint errors, and so on. This is, yes, it's testing itself at the end. Yeah. So this is why it's called agent. So it's not just you give it a prompt and it do something and then that's it. It's an agent that autonomously tries to solve problems really by reasoning itself, for example, and debugging it by itself. So let's open this IDE here. And this is a plain Angular project. I have to maybe stop, sorry. Where is it? Come on. Now you see something. Okay, so this is the Workshops.DE. It's at the end Visual Studio Code. And I installed the Cline plugin. So just go to the plugin section of Visual Studio Code. This currently only works in Visual Studio Code. You cannot use it with other IDEs, but if it's fine, just search for Cline. And then we have this Cline window here. And maybe it's a bit too small. Maybe I increase it. That's too much, maybe. At the bottom, we can see there's this plan and this act toggle. So on the plan side, we can ask, for example, a reasoning model. Okay, I have an idea. Plan, how should we resolve the task, for example? And then we can switch to the act part and use this plan that was generated by the reasoning model to get resolved with a model that is better in coding, for example. And when we take a look here, I used an API provider called OpenRouter. OpenRouter is an API. I can show it to you. OpenRouter. Because it's not that handy to create a new account for each new LLM out there. When there's DeepSeek, we have to create a DeepSeek account, a DeepSeek API key, and so on. This is not really helpful. So with OpenRouter, you have one API, and this API you have to pay in tokens. So there's here a credits part. So you can, for example, upload $100. And then when you use tokens from one LLM, this will count against your credits here. So you have one place where you get charged, and you don't have to create different accounts for each LLM out there. So I connected to that API, and I said, okay, when in this act part with coding, I use Claude 3.5 Sonnet. So this is currently the best LLM model to write code out there. When you check out coding benchmarks, this is currently the best LLM you can use. And on the plan side, I'm using, for example, R1 from DeepSeek, because it's the cheapest model currently out there. So I tried it out before, so let's see if it's working now. I asked this tool, I want to have a list of items that can be rearranged using drag and drop. I want you to use signals, the new control flow, syntax, and the Angular CDK for the drag and drop functionality. And now I'm using this this blend mode first, and we now can see R1 is reasoning. And what's cool, when you take a look here, we can see how many tokens will be sent to that LLM and how many tokens we will receive. Of course, we have to wait until this API request finishes, but then we can see how much it also costs. So hopefully it's not that too slow. Sometimes R1 is a bit slow and fails. Let's see. Yeah, sure. Yes. Yes, they are working not with your actual code base. In this case, it can work with our current code base. Because I use it as a plugin, we can also, it knows its context. So when it needs to read files, then it asks me to do. So we should see that it asking me for, okay, I want to read a file to know, is this dependency already installed, for example? Do we already have the CDK installed dependency, for example, and so on. So we should see that in a... Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, sometimes it fails. Yeah, maybe sometimes R1 is failing. Let's see. If it's failing, it's fine, because not everything is working sometimes. Let's give it another try. If it's not working, then we can already try out the act part. Yeah. Yeah. Like rate limit errors. Yeah, sometimes when the context is too large. Yes, yeah, it depends on the APIs at the end. So, for example, when you like to use the new O3 model, you cannot use it because Open Router is not on the tier 4 or something like that, and you are unable to use it. Yeah, and we can now see some tokens were sent, and now it's reasoning. Now it's working. So you can see sometimes it's a bit slow. But now it's creating a plan how we can do so. And then at the end, we can see install if missing the package, create a component using signals and CDK, drag and drop, implement the template with new control flow syntax. And now I can switch to Act. And in Act, I'm using Claude Sonnet. Now we can see it's reading the package JSON file. You have to enable this feature. Otherwise, it will ask you, can I read this file? So you can say by default, it's allowed to read any file. We can see, okay, to install or run a command, I want to confirm it. Maybe it makes sense. You don't want to let this system install or delete random files in your terminal. So let's install this. Now it continues. And maybe it's a bit too large now. We can see on the right side now it's generating code. There's a reaudible list component TS that will be generated. You can also see the new control flow syntax. That's fine. We can see it's using standalone. And we can also see it's using signals. So now it's trying to edit the app component TS to implement. Let's see. Yeah, sure. Yes, yes. Yeah. Yeah, good question. I will show it to you. Yeah, yeah. That thing is missing. That thing is missing, yes. So let's see. Yeah, currently the API looks a bit slow. So sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's slower. Yes, yes, it's running a server. So we can see ng-serve is running and it should run. And sometimes this part fails. So when I say, click now proceed while running, because sometimes it's unable to see, okay, the server is running. So it should now open the browser by itself. Let's see. And to validate if the component is rendering or not. Let's see. Now we can see it noticed some lint errors. Okay, let's go on. Yeah. Good question. So at the end, they don't collect the data to train the LLMs. But of course, it depends on the LLMs you're using at the end. If you want to work with an LLM trained by the Chinese government, maybe not that secure. So yeah. Yeah, they can tell you they don't use it, but of course they can collect the data at the end you send to the API. And yeah. So now we can see something. Now we can, sorry to interrupt. Now we can see it uses, at the end it's using Playwright under the hood to open the browser and validates if the component is rendering or not, and also if drag and drop is working. Let's see if that works. Sometimes it's lagging. Okay, maybe it lags this time. But we should see it's working. And now at the end, not sure why this time it was so slow. So normally it's a lot faster. We can see at the end, so it tries to validate if the UI is rendering, if the element was drag and droppable, and then we can see, okay, the task completed successfully. And this is what I said is agentic. So it's not just you give it a prompt and it do something and then you have to validate it. We can see this tool is validating the results by itself. It reads the output of the terminal, it checks lint issues, and also opens the browser for us to validate if something is rendering. That's really cool. Yeah, it's not free. No. There are LLMs you can use for free, but when we take a look now at the pricing, so that was 19 cents. So now, yeah, that's the point at the end. Now, question: how long will it take for you? Maybe you never worked before with the CDK before. You have to read the documentation and so on and so on. And this tool, okay, this time it was slow, but normally it takes maybe 30 seconds and you're done. And that's a lot cheaper compared to manual work, of course. Yeah. Yeah. Sure. Sure. Yeah. Of course. Of course. Yes. It is able. Of course, you can. This is maybe a topic we can talk afterwards. Something like what I like to do sometimes is first write tests, test-driven development, and with the help of the tests, then these LLMs are grading code for you. Yeah. Yes, of course. When you now take a look, it's not like Copilot. It's not like Copilot. Now we can see when I refresh it, we can see here it costs me something, and when I open view usage, you can now see here how much it costs. Yeah. But it's cheap, so I uploaded $100 months ago, and I'm still not used this $100. Yeah. Yeah, sure. Hmm. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah, that's another good question. Maybe we can take a look later on an existing project, and I go on with that slides. But yeah. Okay, so he asked how these tools will work in larger existing projects, not just in a new project with some few lines of code. But it's another question we should take care of course. Yes. Yeah, I created a plain Angular application, but you can also ask this tool create me an Angular application, and yeah. Yes. Yes, it's also working.
If you had bigger project than those 2000K would.
These tools are not just collecting the full project and uploading it, of course. They're trying to collect, okay, when you ask me to create an ALF service, why should I read the content of the app styles something, for example, of course. And you can also, there are some commands like add fold, you can add files, add folders. So you can also specify which parts of the application should be maybe used in that tools. Yeah.
You see the prompt that it's
yes, you can expand the API request here, and then you can read through if you like to. Yeah. Yeah. The language at the end is irrelevant. This works with any kind of. Yeah. It's also working. It does not care which language you're using at the end. Yeah. And you have to give it the context. You have to say, here's my backend project, here's my frontend project, and create me a new data model, for example. And then it works. It can work in both projects. It's also working, yes. So maybe I continue a bit, because this was just a small demo, of course, to see, okay, Klein, it's transparent when it comes to costs. You can use any LLM out there. It's really flexible. You have this MCP stuff that's really cool. As you can see, it interacts with the browser, for example. These are all parts that Copilot is unable to do so. And then there's this question, okay, how to make sure that the results are reproducible. Maybe we have coding guidelines, use standalone, use signals, use control flow syntax. This is a question. And there are rule files. So I've created two of them. One is for Cline, one is for Cursor. And we can take a look into the Cline rules file, for example. And you can see this is extra context we are adding to the tools later. So we can say, okay, you are an Angular, TypeScript, SAS expert. We have some key principles when it comes to developing. For example, immutability is really important for on-push change detection. Maybe you heard of that thing. Component composition, meaningful naming, and so on. So you can put anything relevant for your specific project, your specific coding guidelines into such a file. And this will be used in the requests as an extra context to make sure, okay, the results are not randomly generated. Sometimes it uses camel case, then kebab case, because this is the feedback I hear many, many times when talking to other developers. They're saying, okay, Copilot each time produces me different results for the same question. Of course, it's an LLM. This is how they work. But with these rule files, we can make sure, okay, there are some guidelines. Please follow them. This is really important. And this kind of rules works for Klein. This works for GitHub Copilot. This works also for other tools like Cursor and Windsurf and other coding tools out there. And same with GitHub Copilot. I don't know any developer out there that is using rule files for GitHub Copilot. I don't know why. Maybe it's not that present in the documentation. No one reads documentations, I know. That's a thing, and it's really, really important. These tools are cool. We can see, okay, it makes me maybe more productive by generating code, but we have to make sure the quality of the code is also good enough for our needs. So we don't have to refactor at the end more code than we generated, so we don't save any time because we have to refactor and refactor and refactor. This is also really important. And now then there was this question. Yeah, sorry? It will be sent to the prompt, yeah. We can also define system prompts, so we can also define rules that should be always sent, no matter which project we are opening, for example. But yeah, they're used as an extra context. Yeah. And there was, of course, there's another question. Okay, how we can get like documentations, new knowledge into that systems. And this is the next or the last tool I'd like to show you. Maybe I have to. And the next tool is an IDE I use on a daily basis. It's called Cursor. And they also branded it like this, the AI code editor. So Cursor is at the end a fork of Visual Studio Code. And there are a few cool features that this IDE has that Klein does not have. And the first thing is vectorizes code base and documentations. So when you work with LLMs and you send data into the LLMs, you have to create a vector out of your tokens you are sending into that LLM. So at the end, it's a mathematical function. I'm not a mathematician, but we need math to work with LLMs. And so if we want to work fast with our code base, Cursor vectorizes the data for us. So it indexes our full project, so it can really, really fast interact with our code base. And it's also able to index any kind of web resource. We can pass in any documentation, a README from GitHub, any library out there with an HTML content, because the main problem of LLMs are they are not up to date. And maybe we have a library that is only internally usable. How should an LLM out there know something about our internal systems, our internal style systems, our internal libraries? It cannot work with them. It does not have the knowledge. And this is also one thing that is unique with Cursor currently. One thing that is also really cool with Cursor is this auto-completion function. Maybe when you work with GitHub Copilot, you know when you open a file, then there is some example code you can use. The same thing is Cursor doing. So when you, for example, started to refactoring a Redux-based store to a Signal store, and then you move on to another Redux store, Cursor will automatically understand, okay, you did something before, you used the Signal store, maybe you want to transform this Redux-based store also to a Signal-based store, and then you only have to press Tab and return, and that's it. That's also a cool feature. And also, we can use different LLMs. So we have also the freedom. It's not really free. We have the freedom to use different LLMs, like from OpenAI, Gemini, and so on. There are some limits because there's a feature called Composer. This is the agentic mode, like with Klein, the mode that can, by itself, run commands and make decisions. This works only with specific LLMs. And this is also the trade-off. We have to pay for a Cursor to work it in to get work with that tool in the real world environment. It costs $20 per month minimum, and normally you have to pay a bit more because like when we work with reasoning models are expensive. We have to pay a bit more. So let's take a look into Cursor. So this is already the Cursor ID. May I reset the changes I did here and maybe also delete that file. So Cursor has this window on the right side, and there's this chat window. And then we can choose here which reasoning model we like to use, for example, O3 Mini. And there's this Composer window. And inside the Composer window, we can run commands. Let's create a new one. And now is the cool thing. I can say, okay, I want, same as before, I want to have a list of items that should be rearrangeable using drag and drop. I want you to use signals, control flow, syntax, and the Angular CDK. And now the cool thing is I can tag something. I can type in docs and can say, okay, please reference to the latest Angular documentation, here Angular. And I can say, okay, reference to the Angular docs Angular material here. And you can add any kind of documents to that IDE. There's a tab called Features. And here we can see I indexed many, many libraries I use daily. So PrimeNG, Superbase, NG extensions, TypeORM, Angular material, RxJS, NGRX, of course. And when we take a look into, for example, RxJS, this is a bad example. Sometimes it fails. Maybe PrimeNG should work. Now we can see here which pages were indexed. We can see each component, for example, was indexed. And when there's an update, I just have to click the refresh button, and then it will pull the actual documentation. So when I run the Composer now, maybe close that. I also created this rule file. It's called cursor rules, so it's the same file as for Cline. I can toggle to agent mode. So there's a normal mode, I have to confirm everything, or I can use the agent mode, and I also can choose which LLM I like to use here. So same Sonnet, because it's the best in my opinion. You can also provide images if you want to. For more context, this is also working. And then same with Klein before, we can run this command, and now we can see which documents Cursor uses in references. We can also see which files Cursor read it. We can see here, and it uses the cache. So it's using the cached files locally. So it's fast, and it does not cost that much. So we don't have to go to the actual APIs. We can use it locally. Now it installs the dependencies and so on. Let's see how fast this will work this time. Otherwise, I can skip that thing. So it generates components and so on. Same as before with Klein. So this will take a while. The difference is that with Cursor, you can give it this extra context like documentations and so. This is only one part that Cursor is really cool. So maybe let's wait if it finishes. This is also working with Cursor. They added this feature a few days ago. Yeah. But there, of course, are differences. Another cool feature with Cursor is, so maybe we let it run in the background, so I don't want to waste more time here. We can open, for example, this application, and there is this auth store. There's a signal store, for example. And to see how fast we can create another store, so boilerplate code, for example, like we have a new API, and now I can say, okay, create a new one. Add this as context, and then I can say, please create me a signal store for the JSON placeholder API, and then I reference to docs ngrx, and I can also say add web. So it fetches automatically the documentation for this JSON placeholder API. And the same thing, now it will run and collects the context by itself. This should also take not that long. And we should see in a few seconds a working signal store. So normally, of course, I can write this by myself, but it will, I don't know how many minutes this will take me, maybe 5 minutes. I don't know, we can see there are some lint issues here. You can see it's importing a lot because we referenced the auth store before. There are some imports we don't need. This takes some seconds, but after that, we should have a working signal store with this placeholder API we can use. Here, the JSON placeholder API. Yes, this is the biggest downside of work when you work with Cursor, of course, because it's not that transparent when it comes to costs. Yeah, but I like this autocomplete feature. So when you refactored one part of the application, you opened a file that is more or less the same. It will then tell you, okay, I can refactor the code as you did before without going to the LLMs, because it's caching everything locally. And then you just have to press tab, enter, and you are finished. This is really cool. So the same thing like when you work with GitHub Copilot. It's more or less the same feature. Yes. And I have to switch again. Sure.
That's documentation, like Angular's documentation for the new things regarding humans, for example. So
yeah.
Imagine like the documentation is very large, right?
Yes.
So how does it do? Like I imagine it costs a lot of tokens to do that, or does it know where exactly the documentation?
From my experience, it knows which parts of the documentation is needed. So it doesn't send always the full documentation. It's always not sending all files. Of course, it makes sense to pick maybe files or pick parts of the documentation. For example, for linked signals, I only index the linked signals page. So I can say, please use only the linked signals page as a reference. There's also a possibility to make sure not how to handle which data is used.
Okay.
Yeah. So the biggest downside, of course, costs. Okay, so I can also skip that demo. So one thing that's really important, as I said, use this rules feature. There are websites like Cursor Dictionary or Directory. You can go to that pages, and then you will find many pre-filled rules for React, for Java. You can copy-paste them, you can adjust them, but it's really important to use that rules. It does not care which, you can use it, as I said, in Copilot, Cline, Cursor, and Windsurf. it's really important to use them, and also make sure to validate which LLM you're using at the end. I know it's maybe hard because each week there's a new LLM out there, but I think it's important for us developers when we work with that kind of tools to make sure we are up to date. When a new tool like R1 is releasing, we can use that tool to save a lot of money, for example. And of course, do not try to solve problems with one prompt. So don't try to ask them, build me a full application. Do it step by step using this plan mode, for example. Create a plan how to create an application and then go through step by step. So pros and cons, I talked a lot about that before, so maybe I missed something, but I think the best thing is system level assistance with this MCP, and it knows your environment. It can read the output of the terminal. It can read lint errors. That is cool. This works in all tools. What I like about Klein, as I said, it's really transparent when it comes to costs. This is really, really cool. You can track how much costs and prompt. You can switch the models. This is really, really cool because there are some LLMs that are free to use. So you can use LLMs for free. You can also run the tools locally if you want to on your machine. Maybe it's a bit slow, but it's also working with Klein. And yes, and repetitive coding tasks are reduced by a lot, like create me a signal store, something like that. You can save a lot of time. And the biggest limitations are the code quality, of course, differs if you don't use rules, really important. The costs depends on the tool, are not transparent. So when you use Copilot, you pay $10 per month and you can use it as much as you want to. With Cursor, as I said, it depends how often you use the reasoning models, and it's not that beginner friendly. So you don't want to use that tools without any technical knowledge. So Lovable and Co is working for non-technical users, but I would not say if you don't know how to code an Angular application and there's an error maybe and the LLM does not know how to solve it and you also don't know how to solve it, you are lost. And as we say before, the model latency is sometimes really slow. So I have to wait a minute for a task that normally takes maybe 30 seconds. This is also maybe a downside. So my cheat sheet for the end of this talk is what I normally do is first define your goals and tech stack. So open ChatGPT, asking to help you to create your idea and give it some more context. And then you can use that information and paste it to these prototyping tools like Vercel or Lovable to create this MVP. Is it working or not? Maybe change the colors. You have a code base you can work with. And then you start coding a real-world application locally on your system. You don't want to use this MVP code. Use Cursor, Copilot, or whatever. And really important, use this plan before execution feature. Plan your tasks and then run it. So you save a lot of time and you also make sure the model's not producing trash code. And balance AI and human oversight, optimize costs, automate testing, and do quality control. Please do not just accept everything the LLM is producing, commit it to production, and now that's a bad thing. And that's all. Hopefully it was not too long. I didn't check the watch here. At the end, you can scan this QR code. Again, this is for the Linktree website. You will find my LinkedIn and other socials, also the slides later. There's a slide deck link. I already uploaded the slides. So you can also read through. And yeah, that's all from my side. I think there are many, many more questions. So let me know if you have more questions. We can discuss them. And yeah, otherwise, that's it from my side. Thank you.